Hello again, Steve here with a little bit of a question. How many others are with me in feeling a little bit stupid about Bitcoin? Well, if you're like me, I do feel a little bit stupid about Bitcoin because I knew about Bitcoin. I knew about Bitcoin a long time ago. I knew about Bitcoin when it was dollars, maybe less than $1 for one, and I did nothing. Even a couple of years ago, it was about $200, and I had a guy offer to set me up on my cell phone with a Bitcoin wallet and to deposit some Bitcoin in it for friendliness. Nah, not interested. It's not that I doubted it. I just been stupid about a lot of things. And, you know, Bitcoin is, to me, one of the latest things to bubble, right? It's like, well, I can think back to computers, when computers were coming out in the 80s. I remember when the first computer I ever used at school, in high school in the 80s, we actually had a cassette tape that you had to use to download a program, and you had to basically go away for 20 minutes and wait for the cassette to slowly turn. And I had a friend of mine who, you know, spent his life with computers since, and he used to tell me, he used to subscribe to this magazine called Bit Something at the time, believe it or not. It was Bit Something. Anyway, he used to say that sometime in the future, your computer's going to be able to control all your gadgets in your house. And here we have smart whatever, right? And remote control everything through your iPhone. You can put your car starter on your iPhone and whatnot, and adjust the temperature in your house and whatever. But I could have done something, but it's more than just being stupid, though. A lot of this I just didn't have interest in. And so I see that as similar in a way, but even grander, of course, than Bitcoin. Another one was the dot-com revolution, and the whole internet for that matter. I remember I was talking about getting a computer in about 1990. And at that time, people would ask me, well, why would you get a computer? Like, what can you do with a computer? Do you type? Do you type letters or something? You know? And at the time, I'd heard about billboards. That was before the internet as we know it, the dot-com designations and so on came out. And even before Windows, for that matter, it was still DOS and whatnot. But I didn't. I mean, I'd heard about it, and I've always been on the vanguard of this thing. I used to even in college, I learned machine language and so on. I've been with computers for a long, long time, but never took much of an interest in them. But this whole Bitcoin thing has gotten me thinking, because even though I was pretty sure this was something new, I mean, it was more than Bitcoin for me. It was the blockchain. It was this new way that the way it was explained to me, it made sense that this was a way that it would be much, much harder, if not impossible, unless someone was to beat you up and club you over the head and threaten your life to take away otherwise you got to give over your key, to actually be able to access your information on the blockchain. And I think that Bitcoin was just really the harbinger of what's to come, this whole blockchain. This is going to be the next thing. The boom is going to be the blockchain on the internet. So why am I not taking advantage of that? Well, a lot of times I'm not interested. I'm interested in the bigger picture, but not interested in really getting involved in it. So, but Bitcoin, yeah, I've been well aware of it. In fact, I had a good friend of mine he actually wrote a book on Bitcoin about 5 years ago, and he sent me the book to review. I was like one of the first viewers to do it, but I had no interest, and I had to basically tell him, you know, that I had really no interest in it as somebody who would be getting involved in it. And I suspect he's very, very wealthy now. So, and I went to a conference, and I saw Roger Ver, the Bitcoin Jesus, talk several years ago about Bitcoin, and was I interested? Not really, you know. And that was the conference where somebody offered to set me up with Bitcoin. But I have offered to take Bitcoin, though. That this is what I realized from a long time. It was still impractical. I remember even computers. I used to say one of the reasons computers are not going anywhere yet is because nobody knows what they are. Geeks know what they are, right? Geeks used to know, like back in the 90s, early 90s when I was looking at them. Geeks knew how to use a computer and to program and do something with it. For the rest of the masses, it would be a complete waste of their time. So I said to my brother one time, you know, when it gets to the point where a computer is as comprehensively functional as an electric drill, you plug it in, you pull the trigger, then it'll become mass appeal. But right now it's too complicated. That's what it was. And the whole Bitcoin thing, when I was looking at it back in, at this Bitcoin conference or whatever, it was a whole bunch of geeks, right? I mean, guys like Roger Ver talking way to the average person, it's complete gibberish, right? Explaining the blockchain. And also it had no functionality because you couldn't use it. I mean, I've told people for years in my handyman business that, hey, they ask me, how do I pay you? I say, you can pay me whatever you want. Dollars, pesos, RMB, gold, silver, Bitcoin, whatever other cryptocurrency, whatever you want, whatever works, I'll take it. And they always see that as a big joke, but I'm serious. Hey, it's exchange of value. Let's do it. But so I saw that it was a non-functional, except for those in groups. Like at a Bitcoin conference, you can use Bitcoin, right? Because everybody's got a wallet and they can slosh it back and forth for whatever. I mean, but that's been going on for a long time, because I remember in Surrey, BC, where I used to live, there was a barter system. There was barter dollars that some people in this group who wanted to be off-grid, right, used these barter dollars, but it wasn't very functional at all. But anyways, yeah. If you're feeling stupid about missing the Bitcoin revolution, or the Bitcoin hysteria is what I'm going to call it, because this is a bubble, right? It shot up and you saw that it dropped. And you see that the average Joe is talking about Bitcoin, whereas a couple of years ago they wouldn't know what the hell you were talking about. That's a sign where there's a bubble. Now, will it be a larger bubble? Probably, yes. Probably. This is probably in the early stages of it. And you're going to see government pony onto it and create pseudo cryptocurrencies, which won't be cryptocurrencies because it'll be fiat currency, they'll be able to be manipulated, whereas Bitcoin, as far as I understand it, the blockchain is not manipulatable, and that's why it's so valuable, and it actually has to be mined like gold in order to be created. So that's one of the reasons. So there's a scarcity model there, which is, any commodity that has scarcity to it is going to go high if a bunch of people want in. But it is like the old book, Extraordinary Popular Delusions and the Madness of Crowds. This is what happens when people pony onto things. And I've seen it happen many times. I've seen it happen with rams, believe it or not. Yes, sheep. I saw the extraordinary popular delusion of having a sheep back in the 1970s, and where a couple of years before you couldn't sell the sheep, and then the sheep were $2,000, and a year later you couldn't sell it for $10. This is what happens with the madness of crowds when people all of a sudden realize, I'm missing the boat, and they run in. Okay, so what's the next one? I've seen a lot of different booms in my life, and I've seen that there's kind of a pattern that often takes place. I call it the equities, the tequities, and then the real stuff, the commodities, in a cycle. And maybe not in that order, but what I mean by that is, a few years ago, 4 years ago, I was talking to a guy when I was in Windsor, Ontario. He trades in gold, and even though I don't do much of this stuff, I've had a nose for this sort of thing. And I said, he was, what do you think is the best investment these days? I said, I think it's the U.S. dollar and U.S. equities. At the time, that was a complete laughable proposition, because that was the low ebb in the U.S. The U.S., it looked like, had just gone through this big fallout. It was the tail end of the disaster called the Obama administration, and it was looking very, very bad for that. But I said, hey, this is a juggernaut that's existed before. It'll probably come back, right? And the dollar is low now. The Canadian dollar is high, so I'd be out of Canadian dollars into U.S. dollars, and I'd be into U.S. equities. And we saw what's happened is the U.S. stock market has been on a steady trajectory since then, pretty much, and it's hyperbolic pretty much right now. And now you see the techities coming back in the example of the bubble of the cryptocurrencies going pretty heavily, right? And that's probably fairly early in their run. I suspect that'll continue for a while. But after that, once people are tired of the fakeries, they will eventually, commodities will have their cycle again, and the commodities and the juniors and so on will come roaring back, as they always do. And I think this time with Anwar being opened up and so on, you're going to see a big resurgence in oil, big resurgence in exploration of oil and whatnot, and you're going to see a good run in that. So will I miss that one? Will I feel stupid about that one? Perhaps. I don't know. But anyways, this is just a conversation on how trends go and so on, and I think it's important to be aware of these different trends in the human psyche. and in the mass psychology, extraordinary popular delusions that can take place if we can take advantage of those as well in terms of being a contrarian. But it's also good to have a little bit of humility and realize, yeah, I can be stupid too and miss the boat. But that's okay though, for one thing, if we learn from it. But the other thing is, we got to realize there's always another boat. You know, I'm not that old, but I'm old enough to have seen a lot of different bubbles come along the way and booms and so on. And it's just, there's always something taking off, right? And there's always something going like this. People's attention will switch from here over to here, over to here, over to here. And it's whatever their attention of the day is. If you're in there ahead of time, if you're a speculator and you're in there ahead of time, you're going to take a nice ride and you can sell to the extraordinary popular delusion when it comes along and cash out big time. Just a few thoughts anyways. Steve here again. Great chatting. Talk again soon. Bye for now.